Welcome, everyone, to tonight's monthly Girlfriend Book Club discussion. I'm Shelley Emily, the editor of the Girlfriend newsletter. I'm also the moderator of the Girlfriend Book Club. And this month, the 125,000 of you or so chose The Stolen Life of Colette Marceau as our book for January. And I'm so happy you did. As always, you picked well. And I read this book over a weekend, and it really grabbed me. I loved the characters, especially the main one, Colette. And so I'm so delighted that tonight we're joined by Kristin Harmel. So welcome, Kristin, the author.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And I just have to note for the book club that Kristin is joining us for the second time. I think you joined us, I can't remember the year, but it was for the Book of Lost Names.
Oh, yeah. So that must have been 2020 or 2021. So it's been a little while. Yeah.
It's been a while, but this is rare because usually we don't have authors that come back a second time. And I think there's only been Fiona Davis, Kristin Hanna, and Marie Bostwick who've come back 2 times. And now Kristin Harmel.
Well, that is such great company, and I am very flattered to be back. And now I'm realizing I have to set my goal to be a three-peat author. Yeah. I'll be back in another few years.
Yeah, then you'll beat everybody. So as I said, this is the book, The Stolen Life of Colette Marceau, which was fabulous. And of course, everybody wants to know, was Colette based on a real person? Where did you get the idea for this book?
So Colette was not based on one specific real person, but stealing was one of the ways that the resistance movements were funded. And stealing jewels in particular was something that was done, stealing people's jewelry. And it was very interesting to me to explore that because I think there's a lot of gray area. If you're stealing for something that's clearly morally right, are you still morally wrong because you're a thief? I mean, there's so much to explore in there. And those are the questions I think in every one of my books. To me, I have the most fun writing in that area of gray where there's no clear-cut wrong and there's no clear-cut right. And the author or the character maybe believes they're doing the right thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean they are. But they might be. Who knows? That's part of the discussion.
So did you knew about this whole idea of stealing among the resistance a long time ago, and then finally you decided to bring it to fruition in some way through an older woman character?
You know, that tends to be the way that my books, that the seed of my books kind of, it tends to start. So many of my books have been inspired by something I have learned in the research for a previous book. So you mentioned the Book of Lost Names. So that's about forgery, about people forging documents. And that came out of researching for my previous 2 books, The Winemaker's Wife and The Rue Rue Amélie, the French Resistance, and how in each of those books, people escaped with forged documents. And I started thinking, who forges these documents? What are the risks? How do you learn? And that kind of gave rise to the Book of Lost Names. This one was very similar in previous books, and I've written many times about the French Resistance now.
Right.
There were mentions here and there, either in the books or in the research for the books, of the way that theft funded some of the resistance. And I had never really given it much thought because of course they had the money and of course they were funded and, blah, blah, blah. But of course it's really interesting to think how were the different ways that the money found its way into their pockets. But it was very interesting to research jewel theft specifically because it's not like the theft at the Louvre that happened recently, right? Where they're breaking in and stealing millions of dollars of jewels at once. Mm-hmm. This is very personal. They're stealing. So the main character, Colette, and her mother during World War II are stealing from people who are cruel and unkind, people who have aligned themselves with the Germans, people who have gone out of their way to do terrible things. And they're stealing not just as a way to fund the resistance, but also as a way to sort of rebalance the scales of justice. But the actual theft element itself was interesting because you can't just Google how do you steal a watch off of somebody's wrist or how do you steal a ring or how do you steal a necklace, because then you wind up on a list somewhere and the police think that you're like trying to figure out how to steal. So one of the things I did actually to figure out how like the actual physical motions of her stealing was to watch countless videos of magicians performing sleight of hand
Oh,
magic tricks where
that's
they removed jewelry from people. Because if you
right.
think about it, it's the same thing. They're doing it as a trick, using distraction, using, all of these techniques. But in the end, they still walk away with the jewels. Although in magician world, they're giving them back. But in Colette's world, obviously they're not.
So I always ask if there was a particular character or scene or chapter that was more challenging to write than the others. Was it trying to figure out how you would actually steal jewelry? Was that the most challenging part of the book for you?
It was, I don't know that I would say that's the most challenging. It was probably the most intricate piece to research because I really wanted to make sure I got it right.
Right.
Um, and like I said, it was a little harder to find my way to that information. I'm really, when I research a book, I'm really pretty adamant about making sure I can get it as right as I can. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to say, well, I don't know exactly how to do that, so I'm just going to fudge the details. Like, I really want to know. I want to know exactly how to do it. So that was maybe difficult to research, but in terms of being difficult to write, um, it- it- there's a scene, and am I allowed to give spoilers? I'm not sure if this is okay. Perfect.
Full spoiler, everybody.
Okay, so when Colette's little sister disappears, which actually happens relatively early in the book, so it's not a huge
Right.
spoiler. It actually, I believe it says on the back cover that her sister disappears, so it's really not that huge. But that was a really wrenching scene for me to write, I think.
Yes.
Just because of I mean, so much is awful in that scene. The Germans have burst through their door. The mother's arrested. The mother's reeling from the guilt of realizing that she's brought this to their doorstep. And then the younger sister disappears. So it's all of these things at once. And then I also think it was difficult for me to write just from an emotional standpoint. Colette's real sense of abandonment by her father, which is
Mhm.
really only a small part of the storyline. But for whatever reason, that just really hit me deeply because she'd lost everything, and then the one thing she had left just turned its back on her. So I think those were maybe the difficult ones to write.
So I did ask the book club members to come up with some questions for you before I get to those. There's one thing that I loved about the book probably the most was that there was a love affair between Colette and an older gentleman, and these people were in their late 80s, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you don't see that in books,
no,
having older people like that, like teenagers. I mean, really fall in love, and well, I'm not going to say what happens, but yeah, it's amazing, and I loved it. I mean, did you do that on purpose? Did you really want to have that kind of a love affair between two older people?
I really did. But so for me, I think a big part of it was that, Colette has been stuck. I mean, Colette's been stealing jewels since World War II because she feels a responsibility to her family. She feels that it's her job to keep continuing this family tradition. Um, but now she's in her 80s. She's been stealing for the majority of her life. And stealing wasn't a choice. Stealing is something that she felt, very obligated to do. So, and I think a lot of that was driven by guilt. I think she feels a lot of guilt over what happened to her sister, guilt over what happened to her mother, guilt that it was them rather than her. Um, so in a way, when she begins to lay down that burden of guilt, which I think is something that happens through the course of the novel, it's like she's beginning her life again.
Yes.
And I think when she begins that life again, she opens her heart for the first time. So she's never really been in, I mean, she was in love when she was young, and then she
Right.
kind of closed herself down, and she hasn't really been in love since then. She had feelings for her friend Marty, but it never really amounted to anything. And I think it's because Colette hadn't found herself yet. So to me, the moral of that is that it's never too late to find yourself. It's never too late
Uh-huh.
to lay that burden of guilt down if you're carrying something with you. And it's never too late to find your way to the future you want. It doesn't matter if you're 46 like I am, or if you're 89 or whatever Colette is. I think she's 88 or 89. So I love that it's never too late for new beginnings.
Yeah, it's never too late to find love. I had an aunt
No.
who found love for the first time in her late 70s and got married. So I think it's amazing. It's beautiful.
I love it. But again, I mean, and I think this for anybody at any age, I don't think you can find true love until you've truly found yourself.
Right.
And it took Colette all these years to truly find herself. So I love that um the thing that kind of arose from that was that her heart finally opened. But she had to love herself first, if that makes
Yes.
sense. Yeah.
So many of the book club members wanted to know what draws you to these World War II stories. Have you always been interested in World War II since you were a kid, or what always keeps you coming back to World War II?
Yeah, good question. So, the book that influenced me the most in my childhood was The Diary of Anne Frank. I think probably a lot of us can say that. I think a lot of us were very touched by that book. Um, so, yes, I've been interested peripherally in World War II since I was about maybe 11 or 12 and I read that book for the first time. The first short story I ever wrote when I was, or ever wrote and submitted to something, was when I entered a contest at age 12 with a short story about a girl in a concentration camp. So clearly, this is something that's interested me for a long time. But when I began my writing career, and it's been about 20 years since I was first published. I was first published in February of 2006, so 20 years now. I started off writing romantic comedy, which is obviously completely different than what I'm doing now.
Yes.
And at the beginning, I didn't think I was going to write World War II. I thought that was an interest I had, but that it didn't necessarily align with what I was going to write. And then I was living in Paris in my early 20s, and I came across the story of the Muslims of the Grand Mosque of Paris who had sheltered over 1,000 Jews during World War II, had helped save all of these Jewish lives. And I loved the idea of these different religious faiths working together because their shared humanity outweighed everything else in this time of darkness. I thought that was just a beautiful message for the world now. So that inspired The Sweetness of Forgetting, which was my first World War II book, which came out in 2012. And I thought, I'm going to write one World War II book, and then I'm going to go back to writing contemporary. And I did. I wrote one more contemporary book. And the whole time I was writing that book, which was The Life Intended, I desperately missed writing about World War II. And I think it's because in World War II, you find these incredible stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, but not just doing extraordinary things, finding a way to be the light in the darkness, finding a way to light the way forward for others. And I thought that was beautiful. I mean, they're stories that take place in a different time, but they're also stories that feel very relevant because I think we can all put ourselves in the position of asking ourselves, what can I do to make the world better? What can I do to make the world better for other people? So I think there are a lot of modern day applications of what we learn in World War II. And I think now more than ever, that time period's really relevant.
So you said your first book was published around 20 years ago, correct? And you said
20 years ago in just a couple weeks, February 16th, 2006, I think it came out. I only know that because I looked today. I was like, it was February. What was the date? Yep. So yeah, I sold it 22 years ago and it came out 20 years ago. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy. So if you had not gone down that road and gotten that first book published, what could you imagine yourself doing now?
Well, at the time that I had that first book published, and then for several years afterwards, because as I wrote my first 6 books, I was still working another job. I was a magazine writer. So I've only truly, I mean, I wish I was good at other things, but I am not. I could only write. That's all I can do. If I didn't have that, I don't know what I'd be doing. And maybe so I would say I would probably be a magazine journalist doing like long form features because that's what I really liked. I liked reporting stuff like that. I liked really getting to the heart of who people were, which is really kind of what I do now as a novelist too. But if I could not write, aside from just being very sad about that, I think I would be a sommelier. I think I would, because I'm so interested in wine tasting. It's fascinating to me, like just everything about it, the tasting, the learning about where the wines come from and the tradition and the culture and all of that. So I think I would be a sommelier.
So another question from the book club was, and I think you addressed this a little bit earlier. Do you enjoy that there are gray areas in life? You said you like to focus on that, and I'm guessing you think that there are a lot of gray areas in life. That life is not black and white.
I think they're the most interesting things to write about. I think there are gray areas for all of us. I think I think in some cases there's a clear cut right and wrong, but I think in each of our lives a little gray falls. I mean, there's a little bit of moral ambiguity, I think, in everybody's life. And I think that when you explore that and what drives it and why you feel the way you do and why other people feel the way they do, I think you get to like the meat of what makes us all so interesting. So as a writer, and just as somebody who loves learning about human nature and exploring human nature, that's just endlessly fascinating to me.
So regarding your writing process, when you started this, did you know that Colette was going to, what was going to happen to her at the end? Did you have it all mapped out when you started? Is that the way your books usually work? You have the whole outline done, or do you kind of start it and you're not quite sure where it's going to go?
I am a crazy outliner. So I outline like my life depends on it. And I wish I didn't write that way, because I feel like it would be a much better use of my time to not have to do that. But for me, it's an important part of the process. My outlines they have gotten a little shorter over the years, but I would say my average outline is about 20,000 words long, which is about a fifth of the length of the finished book. The outline for Colette might have been closer to 10,000 words, I think, just because I keep more of it in my head now. Like I've been doing this so long that like I kind of know how the pieces need to move around, but I still have to have a lot down on paper, and it's really a chapter by chapter outline. So things change between the outline and the writing of the book, but those things usually aren't huge plot pieces. They're more about character development. And so sometimes I will have a character doing something in the outline that once I get to know that character on the page as I'm writing the first draft, that doesn't make sense anymore. So I have to find a different way to get to the next plot point that makes sense for the character. But it's kind of like having like I live in Florida, if I'm driving across the country to Los Angeles, it's kind of like just driving along and suddenly I decide I'm really hungry, I need to detour off the road. And so like the route isn't exactly the route that I mapped, but I'm still going to the same place, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So when you were doing this book, you had characters like Marty, for example, or her younger friend, whose name escapes me now. But were they all in it from the very beginning, or did you?
Everybody was in it. I will tell you, though, that in my first outline, so I had resolved this and changed it by the time I started writing the book, because sometimes I'll write an outline and then I'll revise the outline, which I think makes sense, because I want to know that, like, I want to feel really good about where the book is going. But I initially had Guillaume, the character of Guillaume, who is Lucas's grandfather. I had him as a viewpoint character, so he was much more present throughout the book, and you get to see it unfold from his perspective too. It just kind of changed how the story was told. So the story was the same, but it progressed differently. And in the end, my editor and I decided it didn't progress as well. So it made more sense to remove him as a viewpoint character and kind of leave it up to Colette to drive the story.
So any chance this will be made into a movie or a TV series?
I would love that, but this one is not one of the ones that's currently in development. I have a few books that are currently in development for film or TV. There are always hurdles that exist, especially with World War II. They're much more expensive to make, and people are not making period pieces as frequently, which is unfortunate because I write a lot of World War II. But I am currently developing The Winemaker's Wife, which is my 2019 novel which is World War II, for feature film. That one takes place in Champagne, France. And I am also adapting my 2014 novel, The Life Intended, which was that one that I mentioned that was not historical. The one I wrote right after The Sweetness of Forgetting. I'm adapting that for a film as well. So we'll see. I'm working with producers for both of them, but I always feel like the lesson I've learned in Hollywood is to not believe anything until the cameras are rolling on day one. So follow my social media, and I promise if they start rolling, I'll let you know.
Every author says the same thing when I ask them that question, that they don't believe it till it's actually out. So.
Exactly. 20 years ago, I sold my first book, or optioned my first book. And I was so young in the industry. It was my first time as an author. I was in my early to mid 20s. It was just the beginning of my journey as a human and the beginning of my journey as an author. And when, they had me fly out to Hollywood and like meet with all these people, and I thought like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Like, it didn't even occur to me that it would fall apart, but of course it fell apart. And it was a really good lesson to me to just enjoy the ride and enjoy the process and enjoy having the ability to discuss with other creative people a different vision for something that existed in one form, if that makes sense. Like, when you're talking about adapting something for TV or film, you get to change things. You get to stick to the core of the story, but also maybe to do things that you didn't have the chance to do in the book, or do things you wished you had done in the book. So it just the experience of that's really interesting to me.
I could see Helen Mirren or somebody like that as Colette.
Yeah,
We'll see.
wouldn't that be awesome? I know. I really want to get this one going for sure.
So I just have to ask, what are you working on now?
Well, I have a book coming out in July, which I just got advance copies of. So it'll be in hardcover, but this is just, the paperback advance copy. I'm so excited about this one. It's called Meet Me in Paris. And
Oh,
it
wow.
is my first book of the last 15 years that's not historical. Wait, no, that's not right. My first book since The Life Intended. So the 12 years. I can't add, apparently. See, I never do anything except for being an author. I might have no addition skills. My first book since The Life Intended that's not historical. So it is set entirely over the course of a week, except for the epilogue, in modern day Paris. And it is 7 Americans in Paris, 9 Americans in Paris, 7 intertwining love stories, and 1 amazing life-changing week. So it's kind of like Love Actually, but not set during the holidays
Right.
and in Paris rather than London.
Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So it's coming out in July. Fantastic.
Thank you.
So I just have to ask, like, what's been some of your favorite books this past year that you've read? Can you recommend something that you've really loved to the book club?
Yeah. So, as some of your members may know, I am part of a group called Friends and Fiction,
Yeah.
which I run with 3 other New York Times bestselling authors, Mary Kay Andrews, Patty Callahan Henry, and Christy
Yes.
Woodson Harvey. So, the 4 of us every week welcome a different author onto our show. So, we have some amazing ones coming up this spring, and late this winter, early this spring, and some amazing ones we've had recently. And we read all the books. So, I mean, it's amazing because I always have a good book in my hands because of that show. You can join us on Facebook or on YouTube. We're every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. We have a different author. But those authors, the 2, the 3 of them, Mary Kay Andrews, Patty Callahan Henry, and Christy Woodson Harvey, all 3 of them write extraordinary books. And both Christy and Mary Kay have new books out this year. Patty has a new paperback of her last year's hardcover. So those are books I would recommend. I just read Brad Meltzer's The Viper, which was fabulous. We had him on Friends and Fiction earlier in January. I adore Brad and I adore his writing, and he has such a good heart and soul that he puts into his writing. It's a thriller, but if you don't like thrillers, you will still love this book. So I would recommend that. I'm currently reading Royal Spin because we're having those authors on Friends and Fiction, and that is very interesting. I'm listening to Paula McLean's Skylark, which I'm really enjoying. And I'm really excited about the new book from Kate Quinn, which comes out in a couple of months. No, it comes out next month in just a few weeks. It comes out, I think, toward the beginning of February. That's called The Astral Library, and kind of like Meet Me in Paris is so different for me. This is a real departure for her because she writes historical fiction typically, just like I do. But this is a book that has some magical realism, and it's set in the modern day and also set in many of your favorite classic novels. So it's about a woman who gets to travel into the pages of her favorite books. To try to vanquish an enemy. Like, it's a really, really, really cool concept, and Kate executes it perfectly. So that's really good. And Marie Benedict has a really good one coming soon. Daughters of Egypt, Queens of I think Daughters of Egypt it's called. I'm like forgetting the actual name, but the new Marie Benedict, it's amazing too. So those are all some really good ones that are coming up soon. Christie's is Summer State of Mind. Mary Kay's is Road Trip. Yeah, it's going to be a great year of reading. Oh, and Mitch Albom, we had him on Friends in Fiction recently as well. This new book called Twice of his was also really fabulous. So that's another one I can recommend.
Yeah, Patty Callahan Henry was on with us a couple months ago. Her book, The Story She Left
The
Behind, was
Story She
our
Left Behind.
yeah.
Yeah, and that'll be out in paperback this March. So just a couple months away.
Yeah, that was excellent. Really good. So just two more things. I just wanted to ask, you're quite candid in the notes, your author notes about being diagnosed with breast cancer. And I think it was 2022. And then there was a period of several months when you could not write because you were going through treatment. And many of the book club members did want to know how you're feeling now. And how was it to not be able to write during those months when you were going through treatment?
Oh, it was terrible. The whole thing was so unexpected, and I'm so glad that you asked me about it because anytime I appear in front of a group, especially a group that has a lot of women in it, I always like to say I was diagnosed at 43.
Right.
I didn't have any risk factors that I knew about, and I didn't feel a lump. So my cancer was found because I went in for my standard annual mammogram. I cannot repeat that enough. It was a very aggressive cancer. But they found it when it was stage 1 before it had spread because I went in. So if this is your reminder right now, if you were overdue for your mammogram, call your doctor right now and schedule it. It's scary. I know it's scary to think they might find something, but if they find something, they can treat it. And the earlier they find it, the more successfully they can treat it. And I'm living proof of that right now. So I was diagnosed in October of 2022. I had the tumor removed in November of 2022. And I started chemotherapy in December, right before Christmas. During that whole time, and I went through chemotherapy and radiation, I couldn't write. But like, my brain just wasn't firing. And I think at the beginning, it was that I was so filled with fear about the whole thing that the fear got in the way of the words. And then I think it was the chemotherapy drugs. And then I think it was the exhaustion of radiation. So it was the physical toll all of it took on my body. And it was really scary because I am so defined in my own head by being a writer. And I really had to explore, if I'm not a writer anymore, who am I? What if it doesn't come back? What if I can't do this? And it's interesting because I think that kind of found its way into the book a little bit too, because we were talking earlier about how Colette finally finds herself, right? And like, that's what kind of opens her up to love. Part of that was realizing she is defined by more than just being a jewel thief, right? She's spent her whole life saying, first and foremost, I am a jewel thief. And I think that cancer experience made me take a step back and say, first and foremost, I am a mother and a wife and a daughter and a sister and a friend. And then I'm a writer. And like, the writing is something I do. It's not who I am. It's a core part of what I do day to day. It's a core part of what I love. It's a core part of what makes me happy, but it's not me. And I'd still be me without it. So I think a lot of that went into Colette. And I was really happy to find after I kind of emerged from that fog of chemotherapy and radiation that the writing did come back. And now I never take it for granted. You know, I feel like I'm more productive than ever because I'm like, I know what a gift it is to be able to do this.
So finally, I just wanted to know, when you're not writing and reading and hanging out with your book friends or your author friends, what do you like to do just for fun? Any other hobbies that you have?
Yeah. So I love to travel. But I have a son who's 9, almost 10.
Oh.
So I don't get to go as far afield as I used to be able to do. But we do live about 25 minutes away from Disney World, and we are a big Disney family. And I feel like when I say that, people envision me, traipsing through the park with like a, Mickey bar and like Mickey hat. And I love that, but that's not, we just pop over there for like a couple hours in the afternoon. We do a loop around Epcot and have a drink and have something to eat, or we like going to stay at the Disney resort. So I love that. I love cooking. And I love watching movies. Like I think that has kind of fed my interest in writing movies now too, just really feeling passionate about that. And then reading, of course. I'm just a big reader. I always have a book in my hand, and I think I found my way to this career pretty honestly, because that's something that makes me really happy.
Well, thank you so much, Kristin Harmel, for being with us this evening for the second time. The book, of course, is The Stolen Life of Colette Marceau. If you haven't read it, I think everybody probably has, but recommend it to your friends because it's amazing. And I just want to remind everybody to please stay on the book club page because I'll be posting some conversation starters so that you guys can talk about the books amongst yourselves. And also a reminder that our book for February is Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. And he'll be joining us on February the 17th at 7:30 p.m. So I'm looking forward to that. So thank you again so much, Kristin. I'm so glad you're feeling well, you're doing well, and you've got a new book coming out in July, which I did not know about. So I'm so excited.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure being here. I really appreciate it. And thanks for having me. Thanks for having me back a second time. And now I'm gunning for number 3. I'm going to be back.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.